Yo, can you guys see me and hear me? Let me know in the chat if you can hear me right now or see me. Awesome. How you guys doing today? That's my first time going live on YouTube, so you're gonna have to bear with me a little bit if I'm screwing anything up. But basically, we're gonna go over WaxFusion today. You guys can ask me some questions. I'm gonna do a walkthrough for people who are complete beginners, and I'll go over some of the more advanced stuff too about how the protocol works and all that. Let me just get this pulled up real quick. Where are you guys at in the United States, or I know some of you are. All right. All right. So yeah, this is the WaxFusion homepage. I wanted to go over a couple basic things real quick for beginners because I know there's going to be some new people that come across this video in the future. And I think some of you guys in here might not even be Wax users yet. So I'm going to cover the basics about how Wax resources work because those kind of tie into what WaxFusion does and why it offers value. But first, as you can see, we just broke 2 million Wax in TVL today. So that's nice. We're 4 days in, so it's pretty much a massive success for Wax. There's not really much on the chain that's this big. What's up, Strong Will? Um, yeah, so basically, for you guys who are more experienced on Wax and you already know how everything works, just bear with me for a couple of minutes if you don't mind, because I want to explain to beginners how the resource model works. So basically, if you're coming from an EVM chain to Wax and you've never used Wax before, you're probably used to spending gas on transaction fees. So you hold a little bit of the native token in your wallet, like Ethereum, for example. And then if you were to make a token transfer, you would just have a little bit of extra Ethereum come out of your wallet. That's not how things work on the Wax blockchain. There's three different resources, which is a little bit complex to understand at first, but once you wrap your head around it, it's pretty simple. The resources are based on a computer system. It's pretty much named after parts of a computer, and they work like parts of a computer. There's CPU, net, and RAM. The CPU is your processing power. So if you interact with a smart contract and you're doing something very basic and it only has to compute a very basic little bit of data, it's not going to cost you a lot of CPU. But if you do something extremely complex in a smart contract and it has to do a whole bunch of different mathematical calculations and look up a bunch of things in a table, that's going to cost you more CPU. And then you have net, which is kind of similar, but it's based on bandwidth. It's like your internet connection. If you have a slow internet connection, you cannot transfer and receive a lot of data. But if somebody has a gigabyte per second internet connection, for example, they can transfer and receive a lot of data very quickly. And with Wax, the way that networks is similar to that. It's basically if you were going to send a token transfer, for example, you can put a memo in it. You could write to somebody as you transfer to them, "Hi, this token is from so and so. Here you go. Congratulations." If you write a very short memo, you wouldn't need a lot of net for that because it's a low amount of bandwidth. But if you're submitting a transaction where there's a whole bunch of data that you're sending across the blockchain, then it's going to cost you more net. And with RAM, It's basically the same way that RAM works on your computer. You're storing actual data to be stored on there temporarily. So if you interact with a smart contract and let's say you want to do a token transfer and send tokens to somebody, actually receive tokens to somebody from somebody, I guess I should say. Um, when they look up a balance in that smart contract, there's not going to be any balance for you yet. It doesn't exist because you've never interacted with that contract before. But then when you try to make the transfer, they have to open up a balance for you in their ledger, and table row needs to be opened, just like an Excel spreadsheet. You would have to put the person's name and how much tokens they own, and for that you have to pay a little bit of rent. So CPU and net, in order to get them, you have to stake your wax, and those are the two important things that we're going to cover here regarding WaxFusion. Because when you stake your wax tokens in order to get CPU and net so that you can perform transactions, basically you have to lock your tokens up and you can only get them back after waiting 3 days once you decide you want them back. And while your tokens are staked in order for you to perform transactions, you earn roughly 8% a year in wax tokens in APR. And basically, you can't use that wax anywhere else. When they're locked in that contract and they're staking, you're not able to use that capital to go and, let's say, provide liquidity or lend your tokens to somebody, or maybe you're looking out for new opportunities on the market. You won't be able to capitalize on them because your capital is locked up and you can't get it back for at least 3 days. So, this is where Wax Fusion comes into play. Instead of you needing to stake your tokens directly on the network and have your capital locked up, what you do is you stake your tokens into the Wax Fusion contract, right? And when you do, you will receive a liquid token called LS Wax, and that LS Wax is backed by the wax that you deposited. So you can always come back with your LS Wax and get your wax back. So at this point, you now have this liquid token that you can go use for DeFi opportunities. Maybe you want to provide liquidity and earn liquidity fees and farming rewards, or maybe you want to lend it out to somebody, or whatever the case may be. You have that capital. But in our contract where we accepted your wax, we're now going to go and stake that wax on your behalf. We're going to generate those rewards for you, and they're going to compound over time. So let's say you deposited 1 million wax into the contract and you were issued, for example, 1 million LS wax. Well, if that 1 million wax that you deposited earns, let's say, 10,000 wax in rewards, when you come back to redeem your LS wax and get your underlying wax back, you now have the million wax that you deposited, but you also have an extra 10,000 wax in rewards. So basically, you're earning your staking rewards and you're keeping your liquid capital at the same time. There's a lot more components to the project than that, which I'll get into. But are there any questions so far? Is anything unclear? Cool. I guess not. So, one of the issues that comes with this is obviously, like I said, you need to stake your wax normally to get resources to perform transactions, right? If you deposit your wax, I did the design. I hired a guy on Fiverr to make the LS Wax logo and the S Wax logo. But aside from that, I did everything myself. I took some inspiration from Lido Finance and I think Banky on AVEX. Are any of you guys familiar with that? Cool. I don't know if there's a delay here, if you guys just aren't answering or whatever, but basically, where was I? So when you deposit your wax into the Wax Fusion contract to get your liquid capital, the problem there for you is that you're no longer getting your resources in order to perform transactions. So another thing that we have on Wax Fusion here is if we go to the CPU rental tab, I don't know if you guys can see the pop-up. Can you see the drop-down menu when I click on CPU rental? No, yes. Yes, you can. Cool. All right. It wasn't showing the other day when I did the OIG live stream. All right, so you have three options here: short-term rental, long-term rental, and PowerUp. I'll go over what each of these are. I guess I'll cover PowerUp first. I'm sure most of you who actually use Wax know what PowerUp is. This is built directly into the system. This is not part of WaxFusion, actually. We're just giving you a front end so that you can interact with the system contract. But PowerUp is basically a 24-hour kind of a 24-hour boost to your resources. So for a very small amount of wax, let's say you do zero point 0.1 wax you want to spend, you'll get roughly 7 milliseconds worth of CPU. You can adjust this slider here, right here. So you will need a little bit of net to perform transactions as well, but CPU is the more desired resource. So I would suggest like 99% CPU or 98% CPU. And this will cover you for 24 hours, unless you're doing like extremely massive amounts of transactions, like running a bot farm. You'll be fine with this. You just do this real quick. You spend, let's say, point 0.1 wax, which is not even a penny, and you're good for 24 hours. If you run out, you can come back and power up again. But that's not actually part of Wax Fusion. That is just part of the system. Then you have the short-term rental. So as you can see right here, there is, I need to format this with some commas, but there's about 1.4 million wax available right now in the protocol for CPU rentals. So the way that this works, basically, this exists on the Wax Fusion contract. If you're out of CPU, and let's say you want to rent 100 wax, you go down here and you will select which epoch you want to rent from. Um, these options might look a little bit weird. I'll explain them in a minute. But let's say I want to do a 13-day rental, and I want to rent 100 wax for 13 days. It's going to tell me right here, I only have to spend 1.57 wax. And if I deposited a bunch of wax into Wax Fusion, I'm going to make way more than that anyway. So it's still pretty lucrative considering I have my liquid capital now. I don't need to lock up my funds. Um, and on top of that, this 1.57 wax fee that you're going to pay right here, this is going to the protocol itself. So it's considered rewards or revenue for Wax Fusion. When this wax comes in, it's going to be split according to the revenue share that's in the documentation. If any of you guys want to check that out, I'll actually link it right now in the chat. But basically, 85% of this 1.57 wax right here that gets spent is going to go directly back to users, because this is actually your wax that's being rented out. If you deposited wax to get LS wax, this CPU rental is using the funds that you deposited. So you're getting 85% of the revenue from this. So when you stake into Wax Fusion, you're getting staking rewards from the system, the normal 8% that you would get. You're getting CPU rental fees from your wax that you deposited. And you're also getting some other stuff that I'm going to cover shortly. But comparison with PowerUp, yeah, I need to do that because the short-term rental is cheaper. I made it so that it was at least the same price as PowerUp, if not cheaper. But yeah, it definitely is cheaper. I need to make that more clear because I think it will get utilized more once people understand that better. I think people haven't really caught on yet. Um, so yeah, this would cover, if I did that 13-day rental, it would cover me for the next 13 days and I wouldn't have to worry about CPU. The downside here, I guess, is that there's no option to split it between CPU and net. So you might want to do like a short-term power up for net. Power up is actually going to become more expensive as the chain gets more utilized, because it's based on an algorithm on usage, how much is available for power up and how much is actually getting used. So over time, it's probably actually going to get more expensive, making Wax Fusion even more attractive. So yeah, we've already covered two revenue streams here. You deposit into Wax Fusion, you get the voting rewards. you get CPU rental fees, and you also have your liquid capital at the same time. So you're already massively ahead of if you were to just stake your wax yourself. Then we'll cover the long-term rental. So there's a long-term CPU rental option, which is the same price, but this works more like a traditional CPU rental that you guys might be used to if you're an existing wax user. Um, these are not, as you can see, there's only 25 wax available in here right now. This is going to go up drastically very soon. I'm just waiting on a deposit to go through. But the short-term rental, as I mentioned, is with user deposited funds. So the funds that you deposit when you get LS wax, that's what gets used for the short-term rental. The long-term rental is protocol-owned funds. So there's a separate contract that's connected to the main contract, and it has permanent funds that are going to be deposited inside of it. So to start off, the wax team is actually going to be depositing 100,000 wax into the protocol contract. Those funds are not owned by anybody. They're permanently there. They're going to be there forever. Nobody can withdraw them. They belong to the smart contract itself. So it's going to start off with 100,000 wax. That 100,000 wax that's going to be in there is going to be used for the same stuff that we just covered for your wax. It's going to be rented to people and staked. So you're going to be getting CPU rental. It's going to be generating CPU rental fees. It's going to be generating the 8% a year voting rewards. But the thing with these funds is that it's not profit for me or profit for the contract. It's getting split the same way as the funds that you deposit. So when you deposit into WaxFusion, you're earning from voting rewards from your own wax. You're earning from voting CPU rental fees from your own wax, and you're earning voting rewards from the 100,000 wax that's going to be deposited into the protocol-owned liquidity. You're going to be earning CPU rental fees from that 100,000 wax that's going to be deposited into protocol-owned liquidity. Um, and this long-term rental here, you can't rent for shorter than 30 days. And I think I have a minimum rental of, it says 10 wax on there. I could have sworn it was 100. I have to check. But as I said, there's no funds in there yet, but the wax team is going to be making that deposit soon. Once that's in there, you can actually rent from here as long as you want. You don't have that epoch-based restriction, which I forgot to cover, but I will in a second. So if you wanted to rent for like 5 years from the protocol-owned funds, you could do that like right off the bat. You also have the option to extend your rentals there or increase them with more wax, depending on if there's funds available. Um, but let's go back to the short-term rentals so I can cover the epochs. So as you can see here, it says 6.16 day rental and 13.16 day rental. So why is that like that? Well, as I mentioned, Lambo is ASAP. But as I mentioned, for the short-term rental, it's using user deposited funds. So your wax that you deposited is going to be rented to people. So you might be thinking like, well, if you're renting it out to people, how can I guarantee that I'll get it back? Um, you know, what if it just gets rented and locked up forever? I'll never be able to redeem. You can't see the options. Got you. This is covered in the documentation on the epochs page. Just pull that up and make sure. Yeah, there's an epochs tab on the documentation that I linked, covers all this. But you might be thinking, what if I never get my wax back because somebody rents it out and then they just keep renting it? We put a restriction on that so that that doesn't happen. We have to guarantee that funds are consistently coming back to the contract so that LS wax holders are able to redeem if they want to. So there are always 3 active epochs. Each of them is 2 weeks long and they overlap by 1 week each. So basically, every 7 days, an epoch ends and an epoch starts at the same time. The full rotation of the 3 epochs is 21 days long because 3 14-day ones that are overlapping by a week. Um, so at the end of each epoch, after the 14th day ends, the funds that were rented out from that epoch are returned because they were unstaked 3 days prior to that. They come back into the contract, and if anybody has requested a redemption, they wanted to redeem their LS wax or their S wax to get back their underlying funds, they're able to do that within a predictable time frame, which is the reason you have these weird rental options as far as time periods go. But this guarantees that wax is always coming back for people, and the longest that you'll ever have to wait is 21 days. And usually it's probably not going to be that much. Any questions so far? Also, I realize the page is like jumping around. I just need to fix something with that, but it's not a big issue. Which of the claim options is the compound one? So, well, actually, that's a good question. If you're holding LS wax itself, not S wax, but LS wax, that auto compounds for you. You don't need to do any compounding. But let me see if I'm holding any S wax. All right. Let me actually walk through this process real quick. Um, okay, I don't have any S wax in my wallet yet. I didn't even cover S wax yet. I only covered LS wax. So I'm on the staking page right now. I have 46 wax in my wallet. And if I want to say, let's deposit and stake 10 wax, it tells me right here that one wax is one S wax, and I would get exactly 10 S wax if I do this. I didn't cover S wax yet, so let me do that now. When you first make your deposit, I don't know if the screen is large enough. Can you guys see this text here? You can buy LS wax off the market. I'll cover that in a second too, because that's something I want to touch on. Can you guys see the text? Is it large enough? Okay, cool. All right, so you see it says if you choose to liquefy, you will receive LS wax, which is transferable and auto compounds your rewards. Otherwise, by default, you are going to receive S wax. So S wax is the first token. It's non-transferable and it does not auto compound. And it's always issued at a one-to-one rate, regardless of what the price of anything is. This is not the same case for LS wax, which I'll cover in a second, but S wax is always one-to-one exactly with the wax that you deposit. So if I choose not to liquefy, I won't get LS wax, and I'll do this right now. All right, my wax has been staked, and now if I go over to the rewards tab, I'm already starting to earn instantly because you get paid out every second. I should probably make this auto refresh so that it kind of ticks up and you could watch the number go up. But you see it says 5082. If I come back to it, 5093. So just I'm earning right off the bat as soon as I make this deposit. And I have three options here. I can claim as wax, I can claim as S wax, or I can claim as LS wax. So to answer your question about the compounding, TC, holding LS wax would auto compound on its own, and you don't even have to worry about this. But I just did want to mention that technically, if you claim S wax rewards as S wax, this essentially is compounding your S wax. So I could do this right now. I made a claim, and if I go over to the withdrawals tab, S wax, it should say that I have more than 10. I think I might just have this set to a round number so it doesn't show me the full. Yeah, there you go. If I click on it, it says I have 10 point what I just claimed. So essentially, I did just compound my S wax. What's not that clear, strong will? The text or something I'm trying to explain? I'll come back to that in a second. But All right. So that's S wax. And now let's say I want to get LS wax instead, and I want to deposit 10 wax and stake it. If I do choose to liquefy here and get LS wax, you can see it says I'm going to get, for each one wax, I will get 0.9772 LS wax. So you might be wondering, I guess the idea for S wax is kind of, well, some people might want to get LS wax to auto compound, right? But then they're not able to spend anything on CPU. So maybe somebody would want to put, let's say, 10% of their wax into S wax, and they'll get a claimable wax balance every day instead of just getting more instead of their LS wax becoming worth more, they'll actually have a claimable balance for wax that they can use for power ups and stuff like that. So I think that's kind of the main benefit there. Set it to automatically. Yeah, you can claim as LS wax if that's what you mean. You still have to manually do it, but okay, cool. You still have to manually make the claim if you're holding S wax, but those options that I just went through, you can see there is an option to claim it as LS wax. So I would get my rewards in the form of LS wax if I chose to do this. But yeah, if I was to choose to liquefy when I stake, it says 0.9772 LS wax for every one wax that I deposit. And you might be wondering, why is this? Why is there a different ratio for LS wax? Is it based on the market price or whatever? No, it's based on the amount of wax that's deposited into the protocol compared to the amount of LS wax that's in existence. So the example that I mentioned earlier, let's say WaxFusion had never launched yet. Nobody deposited anything into the protocol, and it's day one, and there are zero LS wax in existence. You come along and you deposit 1 million wax. You would get 1 million LS wax because with zero wax in the protocol and zero LS wax in existence, the ratio between the two is 1 to 1. So if you deposited a million wax, you would get a million LS wax. And anytime you wanted to come back, you would be able to get the million wax back. But let's say you just held that LS wax in your wallet for a week and just chilled out. You just used it somewhere, you didn't redeem it. Well, the million wax that you deposited, let's just say, for example, it generated 5,000 wax in rewards from staking and CPU rentals and whatever else over the course of a week. Now there are 105,000 wax in the contract, but there's still only a million LS wax in existence. So every wax that you're holding, if my math is correct, would be worth 1.005. Yeah, every LS wax would be worth 1.005 wax. So if a new user comes along, like me right now, who's trying to stake, I have to pay now the new ratio. If I wanted to deposit a million wax in this example, um, or if I wanted to get a million LS wax, I would have to deposit the amount of wax that currently backs a million LS wax, if that makes sense. So I would have to deposit 1,005,000 wax in order to get 1 million LS wax. Yes, as the protocol earns, LS value increases, doesn't decrease. This is actually another topic that I wanted to discuss. I don't know if Pixel Mini is in here, but he was asking me about this, and a couple other people brought this up as well. Now let's talk about the fact that Alcor exists and other exchanges exist, and there's liquidity pools and there's prices, right? There's a bit of confusion around this topic because I've been asked a few times, like, couldn't somebody just dump the price on Alcor since maybe there's not a ton of liquidity? They dump it down, and then can't they just come buy it for cheaper on WaxFusion then, in order to save money? And the answer to that is no. Anything can happen on Alcor because it's an open market. People buy and trade. There's a liquidity pricing curve, right? It's based on supply and demand. We can't control what happens over there. Sorry. But on WaxFusion, on our smart contract, as far as the price goes, Alcor does not exist to us. They're not. even something that we think about. We don't look at their contract. We don't know the price over there. We don't care. It doesn't matter. The only thing that matters when it comes to the price on our contract is A, you deposited this much wax, and B, the wax that you deposited has earned this much in rewards. That's the amount that your LS wax is worth. It can only go up over time. It can never go down on our contract, with the exception of, the possibility of a smart contract flaw, obviously. But this is well audited by the wax team and multi-sig and all that stuff. So I'm fairly confident in it. But there is no scenario, if things work properly, there's no scenario where the price on our contract ever goes down. Because in order for it to go down, it would mean that we took the principal capital that you deposited and we just decided, like, I'm just going to keep some of this. We're not taking your collateral and just stealing it. There's no scenario where the amount of LS wax that you got becomes worth less. It only becomes worth more because it's generating rewards, and the initial deposit that you made is always there. Which brings up also an important point about Alcor, because people keep talking about, what happens on a decentralized exchange, the price goes down, this and that, whatever. Will I lose money, impermanent loss, and all that stuff? So let's say on our contract, one wax was backing one LS wax. The rate was 1 to 1. And let's say on Alcor, the same exact thing, 1 to 1, right? We deposited some liquidity, it's 1 to 1. And now let's say some guy goes on Alcor and he dumps a whole boatload of wax and a boatload of LS wax, and the price goes down to zero point 0.9 on Alcor, but it's still 1 to 1 on WaxFusion. All that this means is that there is now opportunity for somebody to go on Alcor, buy LS wax for zero point 0.9 wax, and come and sell it to the protocol for 1 wax, which brings the price back to where it should be on Alcor. It makes that person money because they just made a profit off of the arbitrage. It makes trading fees for the protocol, because remember I said the wax team was depositing 100,000 wax for CPU rentals and stuff. Well, they're also depositing, I don't know the exact amount. It's going to be somewhere between $5,000 to $10,000 to start off, but it's going to be protocol owned Alcor liquidity for the LS wax pair. So the protocol is going to have a share of that liquidity pool. So in this scenario that I just mentioned, if there was an arbitrage opportunity on Alcor, it would mean that you could go to Alcor, you can make that profit, sell it to the protocol, stabilize the price where it should be again, and the protocol's liquidity has now earned some fees from that trade. And as I mentioned with the user staked rewards, the CPU rentals, the protocol CPU rentals, and all that stuff, the same concept applies to fees on Alcor, that the protocol earns. Everything that gets made by this protocol gets shared with the users. So that scenario that I just mentioned, the protocol's liquidity is going to earn some fees. And guess where that goes? It gets shared with all the users who are holding LS wax and S wax. And we haven't even touched on the concept of the flywheel mechanism yet. So this is probably a good segue into that. But before I get into that, is there any questions so far? Yes, it's definitely possible to do that. Yeah, I should probably put those in the documentation, honestly. So I'll do that. But I could drop a link here if you want for now. There's actually a whole bunch of markets right now too on Alcor community tokens that are paired with LS Wax. Let me pull this up. So this is the official LS Wax to Wax pair that I'm posting right now. We actually have some pretty deep liquidity already, and we don't even have the protocol own liquidity in there yet. All right. One more thing I wanted to touch on before I get back to the Alcor thing. Instant redemptions. So As I mentioned, there's that 1 to 21 day waiting period and whatnot. There's also the option if you go to withdrawals, there's an instant redeem tab here. And as you can see, there's 1.4 million wax available right now for instant redemptions. Um, this option is not free. It has a 0.05% fee, which goes to the protocol, which still realistically is not much at all. If you're in a rush and you need your money instantly, you could come here and you could do an instant redemption, provided that there are funds available for it. This 0.05% fee, guess where I'm going with this, is treated the same as everything else that the protocol earns. So if people do this option, that fee also gets shared with the people who are holding LS Wax and S Wax. Everything that the protocol earns gets shared with users the same way. Um, yeah, I just wanted to touch on that real quick. So if there is an arbitrage opportunity, you might even look at this, see if there's any funds available for instant redemptions, and if the arbitrage opportunity is greater than the 0.05% fee, you could actually perform this instantly without even having the waiting period. Um, why is there 1.4 million wax in there right now? Let's cover that. So we touched on the epochs, the 7 day or 14-day overlapping epochs, and we touched on the CPU rentals and all that stuff. Now, when people deposit wax into the protocol to stake and they get LS wax, as I said, we give them voting rewards when we stake their wax and also the CPU rental fees and stuff. Here's the issue. Um, let's say nobody wants to rent CPU. What do we do then? Because we need to be generating that 8% for users, right? So what we do is we have 24-hour windows. Every day it restarts. Every day for 24 hours, all new funds that come into the protocol, they remain there until the 24-hour period ends. This gives at least a chance for people to rent CPU and do instant redemptions because that's what we want to happen. We want to utilize this capital as efficiently as possible. Um, but we don't just want to leave the funds sitting there forever because if they don't get rented or instant redeemed, then we're missing out on rewards. So at the end of the 24-hour period, we take all the capital that was deposited in that last 24 hours and we kind of just say, all right, I give up. Nobody's renting it today. Let's just send this to the CPU contract to stake it and generate that 8%. So even if this doesn't get rented today, in somewhere between the next 4 and 6 hours, this is just going to end up getting staked to generate 8%. Anything unclear? Questions? Feedback? All right, cool. What was I going to cover next? Epoch. Oh, the revenue share. So let me pull up the documentation. Cool. All right. Under revenue, we covered all the sources already, so don't really need to get into that. But let's go over distribution here. See if I can make this a little bit larger. Okay. Rewards are distributed every second, so users can claim as often as they like. We've already kind of covered that. Everything that gets earned by the protocol, 85% of it goes to SWAX and LSWAX holders as rewards. Um, you might be thinking, oh well, if I stake it myself, I get 100,000. I get 100%. Why are you only giving me 85%? Well, when you stake it yourself, you get 100% of your own wax. You don't have access to your liquid capital. You don't get to rent it out for CPU. You don't get to earn from the protocol's capital. You don't get to earn from the protocol's CPU rentals. You don't get to earn from instant redemptions. You don't get to earn from the protocol's liquidity fees and farming rewards. Um, so it's like 100%, the standard cliche that you hear on Shark Tank and stuff. Would you rather have 100% of a grape or 85% of a watermelon? That's pretty much the case here. The 85% of everything is expected to be greater than the 100% that you would earn on your own, and plus you have access to your liquid capital. So that's like the most important part. After that, 85%. 8% goes to liquidity incentives. So I'm going to scroll down to this ecosystem fund tab here. Every week, uh, out of all the rewards and revenue that were generated over the previous week, we take 8% of that and we use it to automatically create farms on Alcor for certain LS Wax liquidity pairs. So, for example, Waxed Out and LS Wax is going to get 9.375% of that 8%. So, people who were to provide liquidity for Waxed Out and LS Wax, they're going to get a portion of that 8% that gets earned by the protocol the previous week as farming rewards on Alcor. And the same is true for Honey LS Wax, Nefty LS Wax, Wombat LS Wax, LSW and LS Wax, which is a really interesting pair because if you provide liquidity here, you're now exposed to two liquid staking tokens, which are both does Alcor's auto compound? I don't remember, but either way, you're getting rewards on both of those tokens, so it's better than holding Wax. And at the same time, you're only exposed to the underlying asset, which is Wax. So if you were holding Wax anyway, you're now providing liquidity for two tokens that are both generating rewards for you. So there's really no risk compared to just holding Wax. And also, you're getting farming rewards and liquidity fees because they get 9.3% of this 8% as well. The same is true for Taco. And then finally, we have the LS Wax liquidity pair, which is the main one that we want to incentivize. 43.75% of that 8% goes to the LS Wax liquidity pair. So every week, let's say we were to generate 10,000 Wax worth of rewards or something, out of that, 800 Wax would be for the ecosystem fund, and 43% of that would go specifically to rewarding this pair. Alcor doesn't auto compound earned fees are separated from liquidity. Gotcha. Um, so yeah, that's the ecosystem fund. That leaves 7% because we covered the 85% for users, the 8% for the ecosystem fund. 7% is for protocol owned liquidity. So out of everything we earn, 7%, remember that protocol owned liquidity I mentioned, the protocol owned Alcor liquidity for the LS Wax and Wax pair, and also the protocol owned CPU rental funds. Both of these are going to compound over time. From everything we earned, the protocol owned liquidity grows. And when the protocol owned liquidity grows, our earning power grows proportionally with it. So if we started off with 100,000 Wax, we could only generate X amount of voting rewards. But as this builds up over time and more people use the protocol, we earn more fees, the TVL goes up. Let's say now we have 150,000 Wax. That means we're able to generate 50% more rewards than we were previously. These are again getting shared with users. They're getting used to compound the protocol own liquidity. Um, so if there was ever, let's say, a bank run and everybody wanted to leave the protocol, it would become more and more attractive to join because our earning power as the protocol goes up. So if you were to join, it means you're getting a share of now a bigger pool than previously. And this is all meant to feed back into itself every time that there's an instant redemption, or every time there's a CPU rental, or any time that there's a trade that happens on Alcor in the liquidity pair. All of these things are meant to feed back into the protocol own liquidity, increase our growth, increase our earning power, and ultimately increase what we can give back to users as rewards. So it's a pretty clever flywheel mechanism. And one of the things that plays into that a lot, and is actually the reason that we're trying to incentivize liquidity so much, is because remember I said LSWAX is an auto compounding token. So the price is going to change naturally on our contract because the amount of wax that backs LSWAX goes up. Um, if there is zero trading volume on the market on Alcor and the price is just sitting stagnant, if the price on WaxFusion is going to continue to go up because of the auto compounding, it's going to naturally create a divergence in price and an arbitrage opportunity. And this is the case for any pool that has LS wax in it. If the price diverts naturally because of the compounding and stuff, it's automatically going to generate opportunities for arbitrage, which is going to generate fees, generate volume, generate more earnings for protocol owned liquidity. And everything is just going to continue to compound and compound and compound and compound over and over. And the protocol is just going to keep growing. That's the plan, at least, anyway. Any questions? Thank you, TC. No questions. All right. What else here? Block producer voting. I guess I can cover this real quick. If you're already a Wax user, you know that you have to vote for block producers on basically a weekly basis in order to maintain your voting strength. If you're not constantly voting for block producers every week, then you can still earn, but your voting strength is going to go down. Um, yeah, well, the instant refund is basically an action. It's a couple actions that are packaged into one. Um, if you're talking about on like a different front end, you could definitely build a front end that arbitrages Alcor to the instant redeem. Absolutely, you should do that on Wax on Edge. I can give you whatever code you need for that and help you out if needed. So just let me know. Um, but yeah, as far as the block producer voting, you have to vote for block producers to determine who's in the top 21. All of us know it doesn't really matter anyway because we don't have the power to do any, we don't have the power to influence those rankings. But let's just say, for example, it matters and you're worried about it. Uh, One issue that we might have here is for us to generate rewards for you, we have to automatically vote all the time to maintain our vote strength, or else we're not going to be earning as efficiently as possible. So people might be wondering, well, shit, what if this protocol accumulates hundreds of millions of wax? Can't they determine who's in the top 21? I don't like that. They're going to give themselves too much power. I don't trust it. Well, as I said, our contracts are open source. They're under a multi-sig with the Wax team, the OIGs, and a couple other block producers. We can't change it on our own, even if we wanted to. So, code is law. What's written in the code is what's going to happen. We can't do anything about it. The contract is set to automatically vote for who's already in the top 21 on a daily basis. So we're not influencing anything at all regarding the votes, regarding the rankings. We're not like taking the wax and voting for ourselves to boost ourselves up as a block producer. It's all automatic. Every 24 hours, our contract checks the system contract. It looks at which block producers are already in the top 21, and then it just automatically votes for those top 21. So there's no bias here. There's no, yeah, no bias. And also, if you were unaware of this, uh, that means you're probably not earning at your max potential because you're not keeping up your vote strength. So that's another thing you don't even have to worry about. If you use WaxFusion, we take care of all that for you. You don't need to worry about any of it. Thank you, Strong Will. The way that I explained is great. Oh, let me play around with this. This would cool. I've never streamed before, so I'm learning as I go. Now I know how to show comments and hide them. I thought BP voting wasn't necessary. Yes and no. Um, it's not necessary if you don't want to earn staking rewards. If you do want to earn staking rewards, then you either have to vote for BPs yourself, and you have to vote for, I believe, 16 of them at least, or you have to delegate your voting strength to a proxy who does that on your behalf. And even with the proxy, the voting strength needs to be maintained. So it's just a lot of hassle you don't have to worry about if you use Wax Fusion because it's all written into the contracts to automatically be handled. But when you say necessary, if you mean relevant, then yeah, it's really not relevant. Um, Technically, it is because votes determine who's in the top 21, but yeah, none of us here really have enough voting power or wax to influence that anyway. So I would say it's not relevant, but it is necessary if you want to earn properly. Um, Including it inside the swap. Yeah, you should absolutely do that, man. It's basically, yeah, as long as there are funds available, which you're going to have to check in your front end, as long as there are funds available at any given time, it's essentially a liquidity pool that has no slippage. It's basically a Uniswap version 2 liquidity pool with no slippage. It's token A versus token B. Um, Divide them or multiply and divide by the amount. That's the output. There is no slippage. There's no any. It's just Uniswap version 2 with no slippage. It just depends on how much is available at any given time. Um, any other questions? Anything that I haven't covered yet? Um, oh yeah, I guess I'll go over the status page real quick on WaxFusion. I put up this status page here. As you can see right now, this is not really very interesting at all because it just says everything's up to date. But as I mentioned, with voting, um, with automatically staking the wax that hasn't been rented once every 24 hours, claiming voting rewards from our CPU contracts in order to distribute to users, um, creating farms on Alcor automatically every week, auto compounding the LS wax every 5 minutes. All of these things have a script that's running in order to process them. Um, it's possible, for example, that one day something's wrong with our script and I'm asleep or something and I can't catch it. And then all of the things that are supposed to happen start lagging behind and the protocol's not working efficiently. I put up this status page here so that if that ever happens, you will notice instantly on the front end. And you see how it says everything is up to date with CPU, everything's up to date with incentives. If it wasn't up to date, it would show you a message explaining why this matters and how long it's been. And underneath it, you would see a button that says, handle this now, fix the protocol. And you'd be able to click that button and submit a transaction and get everything up to speed with where it should be. Also, aside from the front end, the script that I use in order to do this stuff is open source and linked in the documentation. So if there was ever a case where maybe one of you guys is a programmer with Paka, um, if you wanted to just make sure, like, let's say you have a bunch of wax in this protocol and you're like worried that it might not run properly, you yourself could run a backup script. You could just clone the code that's in that documentation, run it yourself. It doesn't require any special permissions. So anybody can run the same script that I'm running and keep the protocol running efficiently. I just wanted to point that out so everybody is aware. It's awesome. There are ecosystem pools. It'll be interesting to see the liquidity growing over time. Yeah, and also the rewards that we're giving out to those pools. Um, well, the ones that I showed in the documentation are directly by us. We've also reached out to a bunch of people and kind of given them some funds out of our own pockets just to get some people on board. That's not what I'm talking about with this stuff though. With this stuff, the ones that are actually built into the system contract, the incentives that we give for those rewards are LS wax. It's not wax. It's not anything else. It's LS wax. Remember, the more LS wax that exists basically means more TVL in the protocol, more earning power because we're staking and renting that wax. So ideally, anytime that we can get wax converted to LS wax, that's always the goal. So at any time that we're going to reward somebody or I don't know, lock tokens somewhere or whatever the case may be, we're incentivized to always use LS wax for that instead of wax because that means that at that period of time there's more wax in our protocol and our earning power is higher, which compounds protocol owned liquidity faster, generates more funds for users. Um, yeah, it's all pretty well thought out. I like to pat myself on the back, but Arnie played a large role in this as well. I don't think he's here right now because he's busy today, but me and Arnie have been playing this for well over a year. I have messages in our Telegram channel from like I want to say March of 2023 where we were discussing the original vision for this. We decided to put it on hold for a while because well, PowerUp didn't exist yet, so that was one factor. I guess I wasn't really experienced enough at the time, so I kind of made some imaginary limitations about it in my head. I thought certain things couldn't be done efficiently, but we got it all sorted out. So I'm kind of glad we waited because I'm way more experienced now. I was able to get this audited properly by the Wax team. So yeah, it all worked out for the best. Also, let me pull something up real quick. So DeFi Llama, I'm sure. Actually, I think a couple of the people that are watching right now came from DeFi Llama. But if you're unaware, this is basically the proto. This is basically the website that matters in DeFi. You have like CoinMarketCap and CoinGecko for tracking token prices. You have what's it called for tracking liquidity pools and stuff like that. Name's not coming to me right now for some reason, but this is what people use for finding new projects in DeFi, finding chains that are interesting. So, for example, when Base first came out, and everybody was like, "Oh man, Coinbase launched a chain. Let me find projects on there to get into early because I know I can make a bunch of money if I do that." Well, they go to this website and then they click on Base. They see a list of the projects on here. They try and find one that's native on Base. Like where you guys probably can't see this too well, but underneath the name of the project, it says one chain or 22 chains or two chains. Two chains. Um, you try to find one that's native to a chain. So you want to find one that has only one chain because if you were looking for something on Base and you see Uniswap is on 22 chains, you're not considering that like a low cap Base project to get into. You're looking at that as something that already exists and they just added Base to it. Like that's not, exciting to you. You want to find some hidden gem that's only on this one chain. So people scroll through this site and they look for new projects. This is exactly how they do it. Like I've done this before. You go on here, you just scroll through, you're like, oh, all right, this one's got $1 million market cap. Oh, it's lending and borrowing. Do they have a token? Let me check it out. Oh, it's only on this one chain. Perfect. Um, this is like the thing. This is what people do. If we go to recent here, actually, you know what? First, let me go to chains. They're sorted by TVL. So you're going to see Ethereum right at the top. Tron is kind of BS because they consider their stable coin as TVL. Solana, whatever, they're all up here. Well, guess where Wax is? You can't even find it. It's all the way down at number 161 with only 4 projects listed on here. It's about to be 5 today because I just submitted another one. I'm trying to help grow the ecosystem and get people some attention because I think this matters. But our entire TVL on chain that's being tracked by DeFi Llama is $885,000 right now, which is pathetic. And because of this, our whole chain is getting less exposure. Nobody seems to really acknowledge this, so I just decided to take it into my own hands, and I've been listing other people's projects on here. Um, I adjusted Alcore's API and stuff just to help boost the TVL. But if you click on it, oh, good, Taco went through. I just submitted them earlier, so Taco's on here as of today with $200,000 in TVL. So this is good. I'm going to keep doing this. I'm putting Alien Worlds on next, and I have a couple others in mind. I think as Wax climbs up this list, it will help us get more eyes from DeFi Llama. But WaxFusion is on here is kind of why I wanted to bring this up. We just got listed a couple of days ago. We now have $72,000 in TVL, which actually for a new project on Wax is pretty substantial, even though it's kind of a joke compared to the overall DeFi space. But yeah, this is how people have been finding us recently. On the recent page here, you can actually see newly listed projects. Wax Fusion is right here at number 13 because we just got on here 3 days ago. These guys are really active. They're just listing people like crazy, so it's pretty nice to see. Nefty Plex, yeah, I planned on submitting them as well, but if you want to work with me on that, that'd be cool. So, do you need to provide them an API or do they track contracts by themselves? They no longer accept APIs from other people because obviously it's very gameable. If you reach out to me in DM, I'll actually just give you the adapter. It's really simple, but there's pretty much individual projects have their own folder in there with nothing but an index.js file. And then there's a helper file for different chains. The helper file for Wax would be the EOS helper file. And inside of that, there's basically just a couple helper functions that get account TVL is one of them. And it basically just makes a call to Gray Masses API. And it checks, it also counts staked Wax, which is great because DAP Radar doesn't. Um, but yeah, all you have to do is submit a couple contract names and then which tokens you have to include the token name, the chain that it's on, and the slug. Um, the problem is you kind of have to have the project on CoinGecko because if there's no price for them to fetch, they can't really count your TVL. So you just need the slug or the API ID for CoinGecko, and it's a very simple helper function. It's a basic file. Aside from that, all you have to do is just fill out their pull request template, which is just a little questionnaire. What's the name of your project? What's it about? What's the socials? Is there a token? Basic things like that. You could fill it out in a couple of hours probably, so it's not hard at all. Uh, Anything else? Token price. Yeah. On Wax, you have Woofy, Wax itself, which counts staked Wax and unstaked Wax. Maybe TLM if a certain contract has a bunch of TLM in it. Um, there might have been one or two others that I can think of, but not much yet. I'm trying to get LS Wax on there. I got rejected by CoinGecko just because I submitted it like the day that we launched, and they were like, "Reach out to us again in a couple of weeks when you have more followers and more TVL." It wasn't really a rejection as much as a get back to us again when you grow a little bit. Um, I feel like there was something else I wanted to cover. The redemptions. I kind of covered the redemptions before, but I didn't cover them too well, I think. So let me real quick. If I go back to this liquid staking tab and I go to withdrawals, this is how you withdraw or request a redemption. You can see there are three tabs here: request, claim, and instant redeem. And you can use SWAX or LSWAX for this. Behind the scenes, it's always going to be SWAX that's getting redeemed. If you choose the LSWAX option, we're basically just doing some magic on the front end to convert your LSWAX to SWAX first. But at the end of the day, you're always doing a redemption request for SWAX itself. Um, but yeah, okay, so I have 10 SWAX here. If I want to redeem it, use WaxFusion or use Alcor. Uh, Alcor I have not implemented yet. I plan on doing that soon. I just wanted to get more liquidity first. But if you choose to use the Alcor option when it's available, it's basically just going to be doing a market swap on Alcor. So you'll be subject to slippage and price impact and whatnot, but it will be instant. So it says there are 723,090 wax available in 16.13 days. Your transaction will automatically request as much as possible from each pool, starting from earliest to latest. Each pool isn't really relevant right now because you're only seeing one pool here. But remember, I said there's three epochs, right? So technically, if one of them is coming back in 16.13 days, it means one of them is also coming back in 9.13 days, and one of them is also coming back in 2.13 days. So that's the whole three epochs. So actually, today, um, if all the epochs were in rotation already and there was funds available in each one of them, how it says 1 to 21 days here, this is based on like how far into an epoch we are. So by those numbers I just showed you, today the longest wait would be 16.13 days, not 21. 21 is just the maximum that there would ever be. But okay, so yeah, it's week 1 right now. Remember that I said there are 3 overlapping epochs that are 14 days long. The reason why it's just a little bit uh unclear right now and taking probably longer than you might have thought. You don't see anything available in 2 days and you don't see anything available in 9 days. Well, it's because we just launched and we're in week 1. So for the first week, there is no previous epoch right now. We're not, normally we would be into 2 epochs at any given time. We'd be, let's say it was day 8 of an epoch. It would mean that we're 8 days into the first epoch in the rotation, and the next one would start on day 7. So we would be 1 day into epoch 2. Epoch 3 would be starting in 6 days. Um, this is not the case right now. Right now, we're 4 or 5 days into epoch 1, but there is no previous epoch because we just launched. So for the first week in existence, the wait is just a little bit longer. That's why it's like this. But basically, there was actually like 2,000 wax, I believe, available from the one that ends in 9.12 days. If I pull up this smart contract on Wax Block, I should probably put this on the front end, but I don't know if it's really that important. Um, if I go to the DAP.Fusion contract on Wax Block and I go down to contract tables, epochs, um, they're identified by the timestamp that they started on, but the first one had 2,000 wax in it in the wax bucket. This is basically the total funds that were sent to that epoch. But as you can see, wax to refund is also 2,000. So there actually were some funds that were available for requesting redemptions in that epoch, but somebody already requested the 2,000, which is why you don't see anything available in 9 days right now. But the next epoch that ends on day 16, there are 730,000 wax in it so far, but only 7,500 of them have been requested by people, which leaves the other 723,000 or whatever it is available for requests. And then the third epoch hasn't even really started. So there is also more funds in the contract right now, but they're not counted in these numbers yet. The 1.4 million that got deposited today, it hasn't been staked yet. It hasn't been moved to an epoch. So you're not going to see it show up in being available for redemptions until a few hours from now when it actually gets staked. Also, the APR. Let me cover the APR real quick. As you can see, it says current APR 2.26%, which probably throws you off because, oh, I'm on the wrong page. Sorry, I got to show it. Current APR 2.26%. This doesn't make a lot of sense, right? Because I just told you it was going to be greater than 8%. First of all, it's the first week. The wax team hasn't even deposited the protocol owned liquidity yet. So that 100,000 wax that you're supposed to be earning from, it's not here yet. I've been depositing some extra wax out of my own pocket every day just to kind of boost the rewards in the beginning, to make the APR higher. I just kind of forgot yesterday before it was too late. So later on today, I'm going to deposit 2 days worth to boost it up a little bit. But also, when you stake into the protocol, you start earning instantly every second, right? So the problem is we just started. There's only 700,000 wax before today in TVL. So there's only 700,000 wax staked right now earning. Somebody deposited 1.4 million today. So, and they're earning right away. So this number went down. It was basically at like 7% before this. Um, The impact of that over time will be far less because as TVL grows, it would take a substantial deposit in order to lower this. But also, as I mentioned in a few hours, that deposit that got made, that's going to be staked as well. So you're not going to be earning from 700,000 wax a few hours from now. You're going to be earning from over 2 million wax. So this APR just by itself is going to go right back up at that point. As I said, the impact of it will be less as TVO grows, but at the same time, you might be thinking like, oh, well, isn't that an attack vector? Couldn't I deposit all my funds one day and then earn for the day and then withdraw my funds before they get staked? This way, I get all the rewards, but I don't have to, I don't have to leave my funds in there. Well, the answer to that is no, for multiple reasons. First of all, um, the 0.05% instant redemption fee to do that would actually make you lose money. If you staked for the day and you earned for a day, and then you paid that fee, you would actually lose money because you're not earning 0.05% in a day. Second of all, well, yeah, and also on top of that, the fee that you pay will actually go to the people who stay in the protocol, so they'll earn from that alone. On top of that, yeah, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, sorry, I'm all over the place right now. The people who remain in the protocol after that person, quote unquote, attacks it like that, um, they'd actually earn more than they would if you didn't do that. Because if you didn't do that, they'd be earning less than 0.05% of 700,000 wax. But after you doing that, they'd be earning 0.05% of 1.4 million. So you would actually be helping the people in the protocol by doing that, and they'd earn more. So it's not an attack vector; it would actually be like a gift. Um, where was I going? I kind of lost my train of thought there. Um, oh yeah. On top of that, there is no guarantee that your funds stay there anyway. Somebody could instant redeem them instantly, instant redeem instantly. You know what I mean? But they could also rent them, use them for a CPU rental. So if you do that, you're already taking your risk right off the bat. There's no guarantee your funds are going to stay there. So yeah. Any questions, feedback, things you want to see as features, ideas to build on top of this, marketing ideas, questions about the smart contract, suggestions so my streams aren't as so they're better microphone, nothing. All right, I think we covered mostly everything that I want to go over. So let me look at the roadmap. Um, yeah, not much on the roadmap that's really relevant at this point. I guess sound good. Thank you, Strong Will. There is one thing, the OIG voting. It's going to probably become an issue at some point during the next election. I reached out to one of the IGs earlier to discuss with them, but there's no really clear answer of what's going to happen so far. Um, but for those of you who are new to Wax, basically every 6 months there's an election that happens on the blockchain. You vote for a certain person to take office in a certain position, and people vote for that person with their staked wax. So now that we have this liquid staking protocol, it kind of throws a wrench into that and makes me wonder what's going to happen in 5 months because I don't want to see a bank run on the protocol when there's an election and everyone's like, well, I need to vote. I need to get my wax back. This is a problem. So I'm trying to work with the IGs. I just reached out to them today. I have no idea what's going to happen with it. I know at least one of them's not open to it at all. But what I would really love to see is a delegated voting system of some sorts, where let's say, well, this is one idea. I have two different things, but one idea is like a delegated voting system. Since our smart contract is open source, it's audited by the Wax team, and it's under multi-sig with the Wax team. It's considered just as trusted as anything else. Basically, like a system contract almost. So, I don't really see any reason why we couldn't build in some special logic in here to allow LS wax holders or S wax holders to maybe delegate a vote to us, and then we vote on their behalf with the contract. Um, it would need to be weighted votes for that to make sense, though, because if there are 10 million wax in the contract and 1 million votes for one guy and 3 million vote for another guy, like ideally we should be able to submit that weighted ratio. Like 10% of our users voted for one guy, 30% voted for him. Um, it's very tough with the current contract. They've been talking for a while about updating it, but I don't know if it's actually going to happen. I think what I would like to see is a governance token where, honestly, I think there should be a snapshot right before the election. The next time that someone interacts with this system contract to stake CPU or unstake it after that snapshot, it should check, have they been issued voting tokens yet or not? And if the answer is no, you just notify the governance contract. The governance contract issues them tokens to vote with, and that's it. And if they have already been issued tokens, you just do nothing. That wouldn't break the system contract at all. I feel like that's a great idea. And I think the same thing could happen for the LS Wax token contract. And all they would have to do at that point is just blacklist WaxFusion from voting. So this way, our contracts Wax would not count towards the vote, but LS Wax holders would. This is a pipe dream. I don't know if they're actually going to do it, but I wanted to bring it up because well, this is going to become a thing in like 5 months from now, and I feel like I would love to get ahead of it before that time comes because it would really suck to see like a bunch of people trying to exit the protocol because they can't vote. Some LS Wax will be stuck in pools. Yeah, that's complex as well. But I mean, at least people could remove it before the snapshot. In that case, keep it in their wallet until the snapshot, and then re-add it or something. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I'm going to bring this up on a governance discussion. I might submit a GitHub issue and get some feedback from other people. But yeah, any thoughts from anyone else? Or I mean, I feel like most of you guys probably like to vote, right? Like, would you see yourself leaving the protocol during that time so that you could submit your vote? Hope it works out well. Yeah, me too. Yeah, exactly, Wapaka. If you have wax in a liquidity pool, it's the exact same issue. So whether it's wax or LS wax, it's really the same thing. You would just maybe blacklist a couple of certain contracts from voting or being eligible for that snapshot. And yeah, most of this could take place on the governance contract itself as well. So, like in the system contract, the argument against, we're going to get a little technical here, I guess. I understand if some of you guys don't want to stick around anymore. It's been a while, but on a technical level, they're very against kind of making any changes to the core system contracts because they can break things. One little thing goes wrong, something can break. But I think the solution is fairly simple, right? In the system contract, like I just said, all you have to do is if a snapshot has been taken, like if we're in the middle of a voting period right now, has this user interacted? Um, the table for staking that the voting weight is based on is it factors in the voter, the staker, and the person who's receiving the stake. So it's a combined index of two names, two accounts. Anytime that unique combo interacts, all you would have to do is have a basic function that says, have they interacted since the snapshot? If the answer is no, notify the governance contract and let that thing take it from there. System contract logic is done. Like that's it. It's so simple, it would not break anything. And then the government's contract, obviously, you might be thinking, well, yeah, but if that's the case, the governance contract could fail and break the system contract. Well, that's why you have the governance contract open source as part of the system as well. It could be so simple: issue tokens or don't issue tokens. I mean, I don't really see how it would really be an issue, to be honest. But this is why I want to bring it up for discussion with other people because there are some smarter people than me out there who could probably tell me why I'm an idiot for thinking this. But it's the best solution that I could think of. because also with the current voting system, when there's an election, they have to do these scripts that run every minute or every however many seconds it is, and they retally everybody's staking power in like a transaction. It's a massive transaction. It's not efficient at all, and that's the argument against submitting weighted votes because it's already complex enough, right? Just for one person to vote for one IG. If you do it weighted, it'll be even more complex. Well, with the suggestion that I'm saying, it wouldn't be like that at all because the person would just have voting tokens. They just allocate those voting tokens to whatever weight per IG they want to allocate. You don't need to factor in anybody else. You just all you do is count that person's vote, and then you compare it to the total tally, and you update the total tally. Everything's counted on an individual and a global basis. There's no like cycling through every single voter. It would be so much more efficient and simple this way. Any thoughts? I'm probably gonna wrap it up in a minute. It's been like an hour and a half almost. So, not that I have anywhere to be, but I don't think you guys want to sit here all day. Yep, yep, yep. All right, cool. So it looks like thank you, Wapaka. Nice MA. I'm gonna start doing these like every week, probably, maybe more often. Update the roadmap section in the docs. Yeah, I should do that. Some things have changed since I wrote the docs, so that's probably a good idea. The contract got refactored like 500 times. We went through the audit process like 4 different times for the main contract, so a lot of stuff changed. I'll definitely get the roadmap updated. So thank you for the suggestion. I'm gonna wrap things up. Um, I'll post in the WaxFusion Telegram and on Twitter and all that the next time that I'm gonna have an AMA or just a stream. So yeah, appreciate all you guys joining. We had like over 10 people, which is more than I expected for the first time making a video in like a year. So thank you for coming. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time.